Oh shit. You know damn well it had to be done. When I first launched The Sanctuary in late 96, early 97, I only had the one welcome page with the requisite poorly worded introduction, a link to my guest book, remember those? My web ring, remember those? And a hit counter. Yeah, okay, I'll stop doing that now. This is kind of how most of us started with our websites back then, until we learned more and had the opportunity and skill to expand into further pages and sections. This invariably led to the creation of a characters section for the majority of Beast Wars fan sites, each one attempting to nail down what made our favourite Maximals and Predacons tick. They ranged from the more simplistic checklisting of things like attributes, weapons, skills, etc., to sometimes the more in-depth, with some attempts at delving into backstories and personas, culled from any available information sources. So this will be things like back of toy boxes, comic books, and any other sources that provided bits and pieces of the overall continuity. But for my part, I'll just be focusing exclusively on the original Beast Wars series, as this is the foundational benchmark everything has to live up to, inclusive of Beast Machines, the War for Cybertron trilogy, and any other subsequent recent animated series which featured Beast Wars characters in any substantial way. And I'm kinda mad I couldn't include Rise of the Beasts in this list, but one hopes they're saving the introduction of Rattrap for a future film. So what exactly is it about the cast of Beast Wars that still tickles the fancy of grown-ass men and women 27 years later, who are now in their 30s and 40s and technically have more important shit to do? Well, it all comes down to the quality of the thing we're standing for, as the quality dictates the length of time regular folks like us will dedicate towards it. The stronger the creative expression, the stronger the fanaticism. If my current released content on this channel is anything to go by, you might start to understand that Beast Wars had no business being as well made as it was, or as well written and expertly plotted as it was, or as deftly characterized and beautifully rendered in the final product as it was. Beast Wars was a thoroughly quality production, inside and out, back to front. It was one of those right time, right place situations, where every level of the production was on board to produce the best version of a show they possibly could. As audiences, we expect nothing less. To be in a position to write, direct, storytell, or animate for a living is a privilege in and of itself. Yes, it's still a 9 to 5, but I'll gladly take something like breaking stories in with my fellow story editor and plotting out the next 3 seasons worth of plot and character, over slumming it out for the last 20 years in customer service. The responsibility and expectation that comes with it is simple. As the audience, we expect you to do your fucking best. A good question to ask is how and why is Beast Wars considered quality writing? Well, time and care was taken for the audience to learn who these characters are and how they operate, not by being slammed over the head and simply told, but instead shown. Creativity lives and dies within this tenuous paradigm, wherein those who simply tell you what a given situation is, or how a character is feeling, is engaging in a form of writing that I consider to be firmly entrenched in the category of too fucking lazy. The entire point of writing a compelling character is to treat them as if they exist in your own reality, regardless of their backstory and how non-human their physiology is. Bob Forward and Larry DiTilio succeeded for this very reason. They treated the characters like they were alive. The more human you make a character, the more we as the audience will cleave to them, to the point where we wish to emulate their positive traits and even incorporate parts of their personas into our own living personalities. There is no higher benchmark for quality art, regardless of its context, than its endurance. Beast Wars has managed to cultivate lifelong fans due to expert writing and storytelling, which was then brought to life by the legendary voice cast. It's not exactly rocket science, because it doesn't need to be. The formula is straightforward enough. However, in the last decade, that formula has gone to complete shite. I'd say with quality storytelling and characterization taking a back seat to things like identity politics and dismantling the so-called patriarchy.
Down with the patriarchy.
The manufactured politicization of our favourite intellectual properties over the last several years has all but destroyed them, not only in the here and now, but also retroactively. To me and a legion of other Beast Wars fans, a ho-hum Beast Machines experience almost did just that, fucking with established characters and continuity and nearly souring the experience that came before it. Another huge example of something like this happening is the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. I find it extremely difficult to go back and even attempt to rewatch that series, knowing that it's all going to end in one giant clusterfuck of lazy writing and hack job characterizations that fly in the face of what made Game of Thrones so fucking amazing to begin with. And that was just the pebble that preceded the avalanche of shitty creatives writing shitty material for already established intellectual properties that deserve a lot better. And when I first started noticing this very obvious decline in the overall pop culture spectrum, it triggered some latent PTSD and reminded me of the entire Beast Wars to Beast Machines transitional experience. We as a fandom already went through this kind of bullshit over 20 years ago when Beast Machines caused an uproar and ended up dividing the fan base. Again, that's not to say Beast Machines didn't have its redeeming qualities, and there was at least a sense they were trying to do something next level, but it ultimately did not satisfy the fans, and from many accounts, nor did it satisfy the voice cast and other creatives on that project. All the elements didn't come together the way it did with Beast Wars, with the blame ultimately laid at the feet of Bob Skir and Marty Eisenberg, although I believe Hasbro played a huge role in the direction of the show overall. And while there was an attempt to show progression of our main characters in Beast Machines, it felt ham-fisted and took a backseat to the sprawling mess of a plot that was chiefly girded by its hippie-esque motivation to reach techno-organic equilibrium. It instead dramatically altered the very personalities of the main cast to such an extent that they felt like completely different people, acting out of character. I may even go so far as to make the in-universe argument that the reformatting process not only gave them their mangled physical forms, but also mangled their brains in the process. Then again, I don't want to start making excuses for that shit show just yet, but we'll get to that in due time. I know it sounds weird as fuck, but this is how fandom works. It's built entirely on this parasocial connection that we as consumers and the audience have with the artists. We don't know them personally, we're not in their lives as familiars, yet we feel a kinship because we appreciate the work they put in and the rawness of feeling and emotion they choose to express. We become fans of the individuals involved. We show up to cons every fucking year to express our adoration. We build websites, forums, and fan communities. In this case, they includes the story editors, the voice actors, animators, writers, producers, and directors of Beast Wars. I will be going in depth with this and give all these heroes the flowers they deserve with the upcoming second installment of the Sanctuary podcast. It's currently clocking in at a whopping 90 minutes. And the collective we, as I mentioned in the beginning, are adults now. Have been for a while. Well, arguably. And we definitely do not choose to spend our time idly. As you get older, you get a bit more deliberate. The grip this series still has on the fans it cultivated way back when is not uncommon, nor is it strange or adolescent. Every element of Beast Wars is still celebrated as much today as it was during its 5-year run, and you don't get that kind of devotion from an audience unless the product was pretty fucking special. The parasocial nature of fandom is only as strong as the story being told and the characters being, characterized. It can be a slightly difficult concept to grasp for those who never took the deep dive into online fan communities or simply didn't resonate with pop culture in any discernible way. As such, continuity plays a huge role in the level of fanaticism the audience will exude towards fictional characters. As these profiles are meant to be all-inclusive, I'll also be utilizing any and all information gleaned during Beast Machines, as despite that show's many flaws, it's still considered canon and worth noting just for the sake of the historical record, although I may not specifically agree with the choices they made. I think it's pretty obvious if you've seen my other two videos by now. There will also be a concerted effort to include other appearances of the characters since the two main shows ended, but that'll be more of just a quick reference towards the end of these character studies, as I chiefly just want to focus on Beast Wars and a little bit of Beast Machines. I'm choosing the characters at random, with a loose effort to do at least one Maximal profile, then one Predacon profile, and then kind of go from there. These will most likely be of a similar length to my other videos, at least a half an hour and above is kind of what it's averaging at the moment, which is kind of crazy, but thanks for bearing with me. I'm kind of trying to design these character study videos to be your one-stop shop for all things character. I'll be taking some deep dives and trying to peek behind the psyche of our favorite beast warriors to present a high-end profile that covers their entire existence until now. And we're going to kick things off with none other than the stainless steel rat. Rattrap. A known spy, saboteur, and arms expert, Rattrap, alongside his fellow Maximals, crash lands on prehistoric Earth and takes on the form of the local living animal population, in his case, a rat. He very quickly establishes his distaste for the entire expedition, bemoaning the fact that they had to be the ones to answer the call for assistance when Megatron made his escape with the golden disc. He tends to say the quiet parts out loud, and although he generally annoys the crap out of most of the cast, his assessments are usually on the money. After going through several cycles of the Beast Wars, he ends up back on Cybertron as part of Beast Machines, at the end of which he holds the distinction of being only one of 2 original Maximals that survive the entire 5-season arc. This is both impressive, but also incredibly depressing, and yet another reason why Beast Machines did our characters dirty. While I will still include his Beast Machines incarnation, his base foundation persona is from the 3-season run of Beast Wars. This is where we found out about his streetwise smarts and wiles, his multifaceted set of particular skills that go beyond just being part of an exploratory mission, his rawness when presenting the blunt truth to his comrades, his unwavering loyalty to his team, even to a former Predacon, and his boundless sense of humor that exists to undercut even the most serious of situations. And for whatever reason, he sounds like he was born and raised in New York. 'Cause why the fuck not? Clearly the characters' chosen alt modes reflect in their voices, their inflections, and their general personalities. It's kind of how it's always been. Thus, Rattrap was always painted as being quite comfortable munching on garbage from a trash can, or slumming it in the gutters. It does raise a good question around what our favourite Transformers call themselves when they are just chilling at home on Cybertron and don't require an alt mode. And why go to the trouble of renaming yourself after your alt mode if you already existed and already had a name? This is something I'll tackle later on in a separate video, just because it's kind of got me wondering. But in relation to Rattrap, he leans into his animal alt mode spirit by scurrying away from conflict, but once he's thrust into it, he can be quite the tactician. Rattrap has shown himself to be a most cunning and formidable opponent, especially when pushed into a corner and under immense pressure. And despite his reticence to join the fray in general, he ultimately never backs down. I honestly don't know a more badass character, especially one that goes toe-to-toe with Transmetal Megatron, or single-handedly takes down Lieutenant Tarantulas and Covert Agent Ravager's transwarp ship. I know you'll remember that one. His vocal protestations at having to do anything is almost like a shield he wears to prevent from spiraling into any given emotion for more than a few moments. I think his chief emotion is one of pessimism and sarcasm, but this is almost a clever disguise. Hiding in plain sight, his immense weapons and explosives expertise, his marksmanship, and his overall self-described spy guy skills. His greatest asset is his enemies' underestimation. Due to Rattrap's diminutive stature, he could easily be seen as non-threatening, cannon fodder even. However, underneath the brash and seemingly selfish attitude lies the heart and mind of a warrior. This may go some ways to explain how he was able to eventually earn the respect of someone like Dinobot, as Dinobot's first-hand experiences would change his own perceptions of what Rattrap is all about. So for Dinobot, he simply brandished his stoicism and warrior stance every chance he could get. It was always on full display, whereas Rattrap would only bring that side of himself to the forefront if and when necessary. They often met in the middle when it was time for battle, and we've seen countless examples of that throughout Beast Wars. Although he was yet to be a battle-hardened vet, he was not to be taken lightly on the battlefield due to his endless resourcefulness. Another element to round out his overall skill set would be his acuity at hacking and utilizing tech, often assisting Rhinox with the day-to-day rigors of running and defending the Axelon, or finding ways to sneak into enemy territory, and generally performing repairs around the base when needed. This would be the chief trait that Beast Machines leans into after they pretty much cucked him in all other facets.
I am transformed. I am so transformed, I can't even believe it! Ew.
Just let it happen. Don't try to make it happen. Can you feel it?
Oh, I feel a breakthrough coming!
Speaking of cucked, Rattrap was originally going to be a more tragic figure when Beast Wars was still being put together. Based on the exposed brain on his toy, Rattrap was going to be heavily malformed due to faulty scanning equipment, with exposed wiring, veins, an asymmetrical body, arms of uneven lengths, and malformed organic sections in robot mode. Delicious. On top of all that, he was hooked up to a colostomy bag-like heating cable to stress his need for life support. Dear Lord. Over the course of the series, Rattrap would learn to overcome his disabilities and become a competent warrior. The idea was scrapped because the technology wasn't yet available to render his organic innards correctly. Some of the basic concepts were reused for Rattrap's arc in Beast Machines, all of which goes a long way to explaining what the fuck happened to him in the sequel series. And thank fuck for the blessing in disguise that was the limitations of the technology at the time, for sparing us this original depressing depiction. It was quite clear from the outset that Rattrap was already a little longer in the rat tooth than his fellow crew, putting him in an age range somewhere in between Optimus Primal and Rhinox. I'd say with Rhinox being the oldest, Rattrap kind of sits somewhere in the middle to me, even despite his supposed immaturities. As such, he always portrayed himself as having little time to entertain the whims of the immature Cheetor, as we saw expertly play out in the early Season 1 episode, The Web. His age shows a little more in Season 2, after dropping lines about his favourite hole-in-the-wall bar on Cybertron where the servant bots walk around minus their torso plates. And also in the beginning of the season, where he first transitions into his transmetal form, reacting to his fellow Maximal's look of shock by stating,
What? What's with you two? In my gearbox hanging out or something?
I think I related to him as I got older due to the way his mind worked. It should probably go a long way to explaining how my mind works, and how it always seemed to come back to some form of sarcastic insult or sexual innuendo.
Innuendo.
His brash exterior does little to tell us of his inner workings or maturity, but his ability to step up and do the job that's asked of him time and time again tells us everything we need to know. Rattrap's whole vibe implies a lived-in backstory of someone who's been through some shit and formed a particular personality as a result. So his perceived immaturity at constantly bemoaning the fact that we're all gonna die, or shitting on the abilities of his fellow Maximals, is there for a reason. possibly to temper his more warrior-style instincts. Either way, we get to have the privilege of seeing this play out over 3 seasons of Beast Wars, essentially living and growing with the character, while also having the opportunity to get some insight into his mind and how he operates. This changed with the advent of beast machines, which not only completely removed Rattrap's legs and feet, but decided to make him an insecure, whiny, useless member of the group. What made it worse was that his fellow Maximals, instead of offering something resembling empathy, proceeded to treat him like dog shit and ultimately tagged him as a liability. Not only had some imposter taken over the beautiful visage of the chrome-laden rat and replaced him with something so fucking ugly, his personality had also been obliterated. He went from sounding like a bot who had already lived many cycles and was aged enough to be cracking sex jokes, to now being an indecisive adolescent lacking self-esteem and who had zero agency. Poor Rattrap became a victim of something outside of himself. The fucking writing. Not only that, but the way in which his dialogue was delivered, and for some reason the majority of the dialogue on Beast Machines in general, was piss poor. Everyone always sounded incredibly strained and overly dramatic in almost every line they spit, regardless of whether that particular tone was necessary or not. It's like the creative said, we need to convey the constant danger and urgency at all times. So they decided to not only crank the same repetitive action cyberpunk soundtrack ad nauseum, but also somehow caused the voice director of both Beast Wars and Beast Machines, the very celebrated Sue Blue, to somehow get the tone and emotions of the voice actors so wrong so often. So for someone like Rattrap, he already had an inbuilt maturity due to his perceived age, whereas someone like Cheetor was clearly still going through the early stages of adolescent growth. It's a shame they decided to reverse course on Rattrap's established personality and instead Benjamin Button that shit until he was the most angst-ridden member of the group. That shit truly hurt to see at the time, and I wager repeat viewings are just going to make it worse. Even Rattrap's voice actor, the amazing Scott McNeil, has acknowledged that Beast Machines wasn't really up to snuff in this small nugget from an interview with TFW 2005 user Outsider, which took place on June 26, 2005, and Scott had this to say about the linkages between Beast Wars and Beast Machines. It had a story arc that continued throughout, especially the first 3 seasons, before the bad thing happened. Beast Machines. Hey, I don't think the show was that bad, but you know. It looked amazing. Oh, the animation on it was rich and tasty, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't the only one dissatisfied with the Beast Machines experience, but we will get to that with subsequent videos. To say that Scott McNeil is slightly unhinged would be an understatement. Actually, Scott seems like he did away with the hinges altogether a long time ago, but that's why we love the cantankerous bastard so much. Scott is one of the most prolific voice actors in the entire industry, as omnipresent as heroic MIDI horns playing whenever Silverbolt does his hero thing.
I think my name is Silverbolt. Yes, pure, strong, and fast.
Being especially ubiquitous within the Beast Wars experience, Scott voiced no less than 4 main characters during the series run: Dinobot, Silverbolt, Waspinator, and the subject of today's character study, Rattrap. He also voiced Transmetal 2 Dinobot, and even the majority of Tarantulas' voice in Other Voices Part 2, which was the Season 1 finale, which was actually a fact I had zero idea about till I did some research and read about it.
This planet will be extinguished in less than a megacycle. I have no time for your inane banter. Download data tracks Argon.
Bloody hell. The man voices Tarantulas so damn well, I never noticed the difference. This is something new for me. Big ass Beast Wars fan since day dot. Something new I just found out. So I'm just kind of harping on about it a bit. Now, Scott had also initially auditioned for every single character on the show, almost landing the role of Cheetor and then showing some interest in Quickstrike. Just listing the names of the beast warriors he voices is enough to tell you how skilled the man is with his voice box. The ability to conjure up so many distinct character voices would, at least to my mind, make the process of figuring out who the character is a lot smoother. Once you've given the character its voice, it's only a matter of allowing the character to lead you forward from there and reveal itself to you. From one of the more in-depth interviews with the voice cast that's available on a now out-of-print DVD copy of the season box sets, Scott briefly explains that Rattrap's voice was one of the ones that came easiest to him just from reading the character bio.
Hey, I'm Scott McNeil. I play
Dinobot.
Rattrap, Raspinator, and Silverbolt. And you're watching Beast Wars. The animators were as much responsible for the characters as we were. You know, I used the analogy earlier and I use it again. It's like the old Warner Brothers stuff from the Looney Tunes and whatnot. So much of it is in the way they made these guys move and be and interact and talk. You know, we just had to supply the voice and they did the rest. And the writing. It was the only show I've ever worked on where I became kind of a fan of the show because I could completely distance myself from the fact that I was in it. You know, Thursday nights I'd be like, wah! I gotta get home and watch my show, dude! Wah! So it really is kind of my fave show I've ever done. And the characters I got to play on this show were so cool too. And it was a chance. It was not that often that you get a chance to play like 4 main guys and have the challenge of making them all different. And it was always fun when Dinobot and Rattrap would get into it.
One more crack like that, vermin. I will take you out the old-fashioned way. Brutally!
I would like to see you try it there, Dino Boob. Or should I say, lizard lips? Oh man, we're all gonna die. The fact that Beast Wars is still, I mean, people are still so into it. They're so into the show. I'm always amazed.
Beast Wars Part 1 and 2, where we are first introduced to our hapless heroes and scheming villains. Rattrap always uniquely stood out almost immediately due to his relatable nature. Like he was just some dude you knew from the neighborhood. The genius with Beast Wars was that our characters didn't speak and act like sentient machines per se, they just sounded human. I mean, yes, the mwahaha factor gets turned up a few notches when you're voicing a villain. That's kind of, expected. But on the whole, everyone had a relatable, naturalistic voice. Rattrap's was further highlighted by his unique accent and his very particular slant on life, specifically by reminding everyone around him that
we're all gonna die.
The web. An episode where Rattrap gets to shine and show us many sides to his just introduced personality. We get to see an indifference to Cheetor's bragging and boasting, reluctance at having to go track him down and bring him back in, and then later revealing he did so because Primal would have had both of their asses instead of just Cheetor's. But he will always have his team's back, even if he has to be bullied into doing so. We quickly understand that regardless of what he's saying, he is one of the best people you could possibly know to have your back in a pinch. Chain of Command. An absolute standout episode for Rattrap. After Primal is sucked into the alien probe at the Standing Stones, the Maximal leadership is once again challenged by an ambitious Dinobot. Now, I don't actually fault Dinobot here, as I think he is chiefly motivated at destroying or just getting back at Megatron for his humiliating exit from the Predacons in the beginning of the season. However, we do get to see Dinobot be uncharacteristically subservient to Rattrap after Primal contacts them in the Axelon and names Rattrap the de facto leader. And Dinobot subsequently ignores Rattrap's orders on the battlefield to restore the Axelon's shields, thus saving them all, and instead focuses on pursuing Megatron. These early interactions really highlighted the real dangerous volatility of the Rattrap and Dinobot relationship, but the power of it lies in its telling and its execution. Dinobot, by admitting he should have followed Rattrap's orders, shows the first signs of humility, and of his infamous warrior's code. that despite his rage and generally antagonistic demeanour, he does have standards, and he will not hesitate in pointing them out whenever he has failed them. Rattrap 2 first isn't sure how to react at this, almost getting caught off guard. But all of this lays the seeds for their future development as not only unlikely teammates, but actual friends and comrades.
You were selfless in putting that shield back online. I ought to have followed your command. I am dishonored. Next time.
A better mousetrap. Regarded as the most Rattrap-centric episode of the entire series, we get to spend almost the entire runtime watching him overcome the Maximal's own newly established Sentinel base defense program. After assisting Rhinox with the build, Sentinel accidentally regards the Maximals as intruders and locks them out of their own base. It's then up to our favourite trash muncher to first break his way into the Axelon, and then battle the innumerable defense systems in order to get to the ship's core and shut it down before he is dematerialized. Upon the conclusion of the episode, his Maximal comrades begin to provide a touching eulogy, with even Dinobot admitting that he will in some perverse way miss him. Only to have him pop back up, smile on his face, and fake crying. One can imagine that him seeing that scene take place, his teammates actually distraught thinking that he had died, would internally make him pretty happy.
Oh, boo! Boo-hoo! Oh, don't stop now! You motorheads are killing me.
Rattrap?
How did you...
Avoid getting scrapped? Well, it was no oil bath, but let's face it. Ain't a defense system made that I can't get around. Right, Sentinel?
Acknowledged.
You just gotta know how to talk to him.
Other Voices Part 1. Rattrap is taken by Primal to investigate the nutty alien bungalow, engaging in a brutal beatdown of Waspinator at the site during their supposed ceasefire. We also get to see some rare interactions between Rattrap and Airazor, with the former expressing his desire to not be the first ones to arrive, as that would mean that they would also be the first ones to die. This episode is the culmination of several encounters with alien tech throughout Season 1 that builds up into the two-part finale. Rattrap plays a larger role in Part 1, rescuing Airazor and then eventually overpowering the Predacons and allowing him, her and Primal to escape. He remains the ultimate pessimist though, with his prophetic prediction of we're all gonna die, suddenly now reality, as the second moon transforms into the Vox Planet Buster superweapon.
Ooh, lucky us! Now we can be the first to get vaped.
Do you ever think positively?
Hey, that was positive, sister. You know, I could have said, now we can be the first to get tortured and then vape.
You're a real fun bot, you know that?
Aftermath. In the absence of a now obliterated Optimus Primal, the remaining Maximals step up to defend the Axelon from further attacks from the Predacons, who now outnumber our heroes. Rattrap and Cheetor wake up to new transmetal bodies, but no Primal, who has been destroyed by Megatron. He quickly has the chance to put his new form to the test when he takes on an equally upgraded transmetal Megatron outside the Axelon. He manages to hold it down with confidence as he takes on and technically defeats the hulking Megatron by cutting his own legs from underneath him. This helps further establish his reliability to defend his keep with everything he's got in the times that absolutely require it. While he still complains, he comes off incredibly determined, formidable, and in control despite the chaos around him.
How are you got? Brains is another story.
Maximal no more. The episode that tests the now relatively strong friendship between Rattrap and Dinobot to its limits. After thinking Dinobot has been captured by the Predacons, Rattrap chases him and Megatron down and thinks he's rescuing his friend, only to be shot down, not knowing that Dinobot had switched sides yet again. After Dinobot can't summon the strength to kill his friend, their connection is cemented. Despite the betrayal, Rattrap chooses not to make light of his friend's lack of better judgment, at least not until their confrontation in Code of Hero.
You know, I thought you were really gonna scrap me back there. How come you didn't?
Consider that a rehearsal for the real moment. A moment I will choose.
Glad to have you back, Dino Butt.
The pleasure is all yours, vermin.
Code of Hero. The sterling high watermark of Transformers fandom. It's obviously Dinobot's story, with Rattrap not playing a major role. However, the only person who was on their knees upon Dinobot's deathbed, clutching his hand as his spark left his body and joined the Matrix, was Rattrap. The depth of their friendship is on full display as two begrudged teammates turned great friends finally acknowledge each other's camaraderie and brotherhood with a smile, as Dinobot takes one last jab at his friend's lack of personal hygiene. It's a shame we never got to see a follow-up to this explored with the aborted Season 3 episode Dark Glass, which has since reached mythic status over the decades as being the episode that was deemed too dark to make.
Like I said, you're just a blasted slag-spouting saurian, but it's nice to know where you stand.
Upwind of you for preference, vermin.
The Agenda Trilogy. I guess I would count the entire Agenda Trilogy as being fairly Rattrap-centric, starting with his now legendary dig at Silverbolt due to his not-so-well-kept secret of boning Black Arachnia.
So, where you been, bird dog?
Scout Patrol.
Oh, yeah. Scouting the enemy, yeah. Find any new positions?
He then swings into full-on die-hard mode when him and the remaining Maximals are trying to defend the Axelon from the might of both Ravager's ship and the Predacons, triggering something he called Knievel mode, a sly reference to the ramped jump he does to get himself onto Ravager's transwarp ship.
This mouse is going cat hunting. Knievel mode. Maximum scorch.
After trying to laser his way through, he ends up simply chewing into the ship's hull in the classic scene where he completely surprises the shit out of Tarantulas, attaching 2 sticky bombs to his hands, then heading back up top to ride the entire ship and its massive nuclear weapon down to the surface, whipping his tail and yee-hawing, clearly evoking Major TJ King Kong from Doctor Strangelove. The closest thing to a friend he has, Rhinox, ends up catching him and getting a smooch on the cheek for it. I love seeing Rattrap getting amongst the fight because he usually has to fight smarter than everyone else while maximizing his resources, which produces some beautiful animated direction. Changing of the Guard, where Rattrap goes on an undersea adventure to reclaim Sentinel from the now sunk Axelon, which I only just found out through many trivia sources that the main reason for slagging the Axelon was due to Primal no longer being able to fit inside the ship in his current optimal Optimus form. The other piece of trivia that would have linked to this episode would have been the aforementioned Dark Glass, based on the quick scene from Season 2 with Dinobot downloading something into the Axelon. Rattrap would then, upon recovering their main archives, find that Dinobot had uploaded a copy of his own consciousness. Not his spark, but his personality and his knowledge. This would then be revived within Transmetal 2 Dinobot, and would have seen some heart-wrenching stuff that could have sat shoulder to shoulder with Code of Hero. But it's an episode worth noting, simply for Rattrap's overall utility within the group. Nemesis Part 2. Obviously this is notable for being the series finale to the Beast Wars saga as we know it, but this is a great bookend to Rattrap's entire existence throughout the Beast Wars, as just when things look the bleakest, he once again utters his famous catchphrase, seemingly for the last time, only this time there's no one to rebuke him, with Rhinox simply agreeing with a "Yup."
No power, no weapons. We're all gonna die.
Yup.
They had all finally come around to seeing things his way, as the events of Beast Wars only tended to go from bad to worse from season to season, culminating with what looked like their ultimate doom. The weak component. Man, I honestly don't have too much to say at the current moment about specific Beast Machines episodes, as the majority of them don't do Rattrap any justice. I'm highlighting the only real Rattrap-centric episode there is, specifically for its different tone and the fact that it took a swing and tried something different based on the parameters they had set for themselves. Still, was a piece of shit, but it was a less stinky piece of shit. Said another way, there were some bright spots among the shit heap. The weak component played on Rattrap's now growing insecurities about being unable to be an effective member of the group, even when he does transform. This leads to him spending one night defending a weakened Megatron against his own team. In a vacuum, it was an interesting experiment, and probably one of the coolest looking in terms of color palettes and just general animation. It also didn't exclusively rely on the rinse-repeat formula Beast Machines had already established up to that point, taking an episode out to at least attempt a mini character study. However, the same criticisms abound. This is not Rattrap. He would not hesitate to put Megatron down, even more so now. Despite his team's lack of confidence in him and his new form, the Maximals themselves wouldn't so blithely toss their comrade aside or even speak that ill of him, considering what they all went through just to get to this point. And the delivery of the dialogue wasn't that great either. It almost felt like an anthology episode that was told out of the current events, like it was a different show within the show. That might be the only reason why I've included it here. So whether or not you see him as a stinking, scurrying rodent that only exists to be exterminated, Rattrap still manages to demand respect and admiration from his peers, as he knows how and when to get the job done. The absolute boon to the legacy of Beast Wars has been its unusually strong characters and top-notch writing and plotting, which again has become such an antiquated notion amongst the modern sea of fast food dreck passing for quality entertainment these days. If even a fucking cartoon can bother to put their all into making the best thing possible, there are no excuses for anything else to be so shit. Humanity usually looks for a beacon to guide them, and we will dedicate time and attention to those leaders who can put together not only a competent product, but also a creatively bountiful experience that rewards your ongoing viewership with excellent replay value, based on the everlastingly relevant tenets of planning and writing one big story, and using amazing characters with which to tell it. Rattrap, like all other characters on the show, is so unique in his own way that he may as well be human. One of the other factors I mentioned earlier that contributes to the success of Beast Wars. To myself and legions of other nerds in all realms of culture, pop or otherwise, characters are like old friends we've had since childhood. We just never got to interact with them, only observe them as they lived their finite lives. But upon the observation, and depending on how well their story plays out, we feel like we know them intimately. Rattrap felt so real to me growing up because he wasn't talking down to me. In fact, as per the numerous times I've already mentioned his sexual innuendos and inappropriate comments, he was doing the opposite. The show and its characters gave the audience the benefit of the doubt that we were intelligent enough to gauge what was happening and what the stakes were by leveraging the well-earned emotional mind states of each character, allowing us the opportunity to truly understand them, how they work, and why they make the decisions they do. Again, not rocket science. Rattrap as a character was almost the unofficial voice of the audience, not necessarily breaking the fourth wall, but by providing some form of meta commentary as events played out in the series. To finish off, I wanted to reinforce the importance of character and in providing the right environment and guidance to coaxing out not only the optimum voice, but to figuring out a whole personality. Now, instead of me continuing to wax lyrical, I thought I'd read out a great summary provided by blogcritics.org for a recent article titled Botcon, a look back at Beast Wars Transformers. The session itself was helmed by voice director and voice of RC and Transmutate, Susan Blue, and the legendary voice actors Gary Chalk, Scott McNeil, and Venus Terzo. The session itself took place on the 26th of August during BotCon 2023, so just a couple of months back, and touches on the advent of computer animation and how it affected voice acting. Also touches on the recording sessions for the voice actors, and just the overall strong character work that was done on the show. The Beast Wars Transformers retrospective proved to be one of the most popular panels at BotCon, the convention about all things Transformers. Voice director Sue Blue and voice actors Gary Chalk, Scott McNeil, and Venus Terzo reflected about their experiences working on the 1990s cartoon. McNeil, who voiced Dinobot, Waspinator, Rattrap, and Silverbolt, appreciated that the series had an extraordinary 3-year storyline. He said, "We didn't know how special it was going to be. It was one of the first North American style shows that we'd done with an ensemble cast where it wasn't 22 minutes of fun adventures, saving the universe, and then a PSA at the end. And let's sell some action figures." Beast Wars also marked a transition point in animation, coming out after the first computer animated TV series reboot. Blue said, "Transformers was a very new show in 3D. What was great about it was they were all robots. In 3D animation in the beginning, you noticed the hair, that they could never get it to move. It was crazy. I love 2D animation, but it's opened up because of 3D. They can animate a lot quicker." They were asked if the animation style required a shift in techniques. Overall, it didn't. Voice actors approach computer-generated characters in the same way as with traditionally drawn characters. They look at notes and an image of the character, using those clues as they try out different voices. Chalk, the voice of Optimus Primal, said, "They come partially out of how you analyze the voice for yourself. It's an organic connection between you and the director and the creators of the character." For McNeil, both types of animation have the same goal. The greatest of animation is not making something move. Anybody can make the jaws, mouth, and face move. Animation is breathing life into it. Terzo, who voiced Black Arachnia, commented about the opportunities that emerged in the Vancouver recording studio. She said, "Sue really helped us a lot. When we first started recording Beast Wars, we would do line by line. Then as time progressed and as she got to know us better and our characters, we got to do scenes." Agreeing with Terzo, Chalk saw benefits in the collaborative efforts of the cast during scenes. You feed off of each other. You're not trying to guess what the other person is going to say or how they're going to react. They react the way they would in a moment like real life, on-camera acting. In the recording rooms and booths, voice actors rarely sit or stand still. They move and gesture a lot as they embody a character's personality and mannerisms. McNeil said, "People who come in and watch are surprised at how physical it actually is. You only got one thing to channel a performance through, but the whole performance has to be there. You're not standing there doing a voice, you're doing a character." Chalk emphasized that flexibility and openness to direction are good traits in voice actors. For example, in Beast Wars, he was originally going to be the villain Megatron. However, he switched his focus and worked out Optimus Primal's voice with Blue. He said, They thought that somehow David K would be a better Megatron and I would be a better Optimus. Good call. I remember Sue telling me to make it not stern but fatherly, make it this, make it that, adding all these things until we came to a point where he became mammalian and organic. And creating a great character often begins in the audition process. It's important for your performance to fulfill the intentions of the writer. If a director can't find a good fit for the role, you might see as many as 50 voice actors auditioning by the end of tryouts. Blue said, "What colors can I bring to the character that are real and are from my gut and heart? How can this character be different than the 49 other people auditioning for this role?" Half the battle with writing is the ability to get your point across without hitting someone over the head with it. And the only true avenue to express yourself in that fashion as a writer is a strong character. With the prior points taken into consideration, it's clear that the effort put into the Beast Wars experience has paid never-ending dividends for the creatives involved, while also fostering lifelong dedicated and adoring fans along the way, to the point where we can't seem to get enough. I'll be delving into a Predacon character for the next one, all chosen completely at random, or, depending on what strain of bud I imbibed on that particular day. But I do thank you for your attention and your ears, and I will see you in the next one. Mojo out.